very few things are kind of universally loved or universally hated in anything, especially in the world of college football. But man, the overwhelming majority of college football fans really seem to hate the transfer portal. I don't have a problem with a transfer portal in and of itself. I sometimes think players make silly decisions regarding the transfer portal, but like I don't have a problem with players having the ability to transfer. I don't. Coaches do it all the time. Um, I understand sort of the argument against it. It's like NFL free agency and players don't want to work for a starting spot. Like I get all that kind of stuff, and I would prefer to have a player who's willing to kind of pay his dues, put the work in, earn a starting spot over the course of a year or two. Of course, I would. Anybody would love that. More time in a program is better than less time in a program, generally speaking. But I do, I do think it's unfair, I guess, to lock players into a school permanently. Now, could there be changes made around the transfer portal? How it works, the dates, when they can go in, when they can come out, how many times? Of course, there's always ways to tweak things, change things, fix things, correct things, make things different or better. But in general, I do support a player's right to transfer to a different school. But every year, man, this thing gets crazier and crazier. I can't believe Kyle McCord. Look, I don't think Kyle McCord had a great year. I've been pretty open and honest about it. Do I think Kyle McCord's a terrible quarterback? No. Do I think Kyle McCord is at the level as a quarterback that Ohio State is accustomed to having? No. He's a significant drop off at the quarterback position compared to any other Ohio State quarterback you can find going back over a decade or so. I understand fan criticism of Kyle McCord. I understand non-fan. It's just pretty obvious if you watch him play. But I am surprised he entered the transfer portal. You're talking about a guy that has been the starting quarterback at Ohio State all year long. Really, you had the first couple of weeks of the season where they kind of played a couple of quarterbacks. Devin Brown, I guess, was the other one. But it was pretty much solidified. Kyle McCord was the QB for the entirety of the year. All the way up and through the Michigan game, and he had a couple of key turnovers in that game, and the fans are unhappy, and you never want to lose to Michigan. I get all that, but man, that one kind of surprised me. I have a feeling that Ohio State fans probably aren't going to mind that Kyle McCord is entering the transfer portal. I guess my question would be to Ohio State fans, or just to anybody in general, what do you think? What's the next step there for Ohio State? Is it Devin Brown? Is it a freshman they're bringing in? Is Ohio State going to go into the transfer portal and look for a QB? I mean, look, it's still a little rare for starting quarterbacks to transfer. It's not, generally speaking, the portal is not filled with experienced players. And obviously you'd rather have an experienced player than an unexperienced player, if all other things are equal. But the quarterback play at Ohio State was just not up to par for what they're used to having there. So, you always wonder what happened here. Did the coaches come to him and kind of say, hey, we're probably going to go a different direction next year at quarterback if you want to look somewhere else? You never really know. But that's interesting to me. Kyle McCord entering the portal. Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel threw for the sixth most yards in all of college football at Oklahoma this past year. And Oklahoma has been kind of an afterthought over the last month or so, but aren't they 10-2? I mean, that was a really good year for Oklahoma and Brent Venables in year two. Now, they didn't win the Big 12. They didn't even get to play for the Big 12 title. But, I mean, they beat Texas. They've given Texas their only loss. This guy's been in college 4 or 5 years, one of the most experienced starting quarterbacks in all of college football. And now you're looking at a situation with Oklahoma where they have lost their offensive coordinator, Jeff Lebby. He got a head coaching job. And now they've lost their starting quarterback. Now, I know more about the Oklahoma backup quarterback situation than I do about Ohio State, so I could be wrong on this, but I'm very high on Jackson Arnold. I don't think, I'm not a recruiting expert, so I'll just throw that out there. If you've been watching me for a while, I freely admit that all the time. I tend to follow team rankings and sort of how good a class is overall versus tracking individual players on certain teams. But I don't think Jackson Arnold was like the top rated quarterback in last year's class or whatever. That was, I guess, Arch Manning. But a lot of people that I heard talk about Jackson Arnold, a lot of people that do follow recruiting way closer than I do, people whose opinions I trust and respect, maybe not always agree with, but trust and respect their opinion. I heard a lot of people talking about Jackson Arnold as probably the most college-ready quarterback in last year's high school signing class. So I'm assuming Oklahoma, that'll be the next, it'll be Jackson Arnold next year at Oklahoma. I'm assuming. The Oklahoma fans, please tell me if I'm wrong. Again, I watch a lot of college football. I'm by no means an expert on recruiting or every single team in the country's second and third string situations. But so I'm just going off of what I've heard and read over the last year about Jackson Arnold. Is that what Oklahoma fans are sort of looking to for next year? Are you ready to kind of move on from Dillon Gabriel? Are you okay with him transferring out? Somebody's going to pick up Dillon Gabriel. Somebody's going to pick up Kyle McCord. There are a lot of teams. But look at Alabama this year. And notice it's not a trash Jalen Mildew thing. But Alabama was coming into the season this year with Jalen Milroe. And what was the other guy's name? Ty Simpson. Neither one of them had really any starting experience. Jalen Milroe had started a game the year before when Bryce Young was hurt, but Alabama was coming into the season with two quarterbacks, none of which had any starting experience. So what did they do? They went to the portal. They brought in the guy from Notre Dame. Now, he wasn't any sort of all-world elite player, but he was a guy with an entire season's worth of college starting experience. Experience is valued by teams, by coaches, especially in the quarterback room. So somebody like a Kyle McCord, like a Dillon Gabriel entering the portal, they will have a choice of places to go, I think. Hell, look at Graham Mertz. Graham Mertz stunk the place up in Wisconsin for 2 or 3 years. Wisconsin fans didn't like him. His numbers were terrible. He never lived up to his recruiting rating. But what happened when he entered the portal? There were several teams that were after him, and he wound up at Florida, and he started all year. And he actually had a better year at Florida, I think, than any year he ever had at Wisconsin. So, there is hope for your Kyle McCords and for your Dillon Gabriels. It's very important. Fit is very important. You've got to land in the right spot at the right time. We'll see what happens with Dillon Gabriel and Kyle McCord. But I'm assuming Oklahoma fans, well, I'll put it this way. Between the Oklahoma and Ohio State, Dillon Gabriel, Kyle McCord both leave. I would rather be in Oklahoma's situation than I would Ohio State's. Strictly speaking about the quarterback position. Obviously, Ohio State's got a talented roster top to bottom, probably a better roster than Oklahoma, better pieces around. I'm talking just strictly from a quarterback situation as far as what I know about what's on those teams' rosters today. I would rather be Oklahoma losing Dillon Gabriel knowing I have Jackson Arnold to step in than I would to be Ohio State losing Kyle McCord and not really knowing where we're going for the following year. And again, to the Ohio State fans, please correct me or let me know in the comment section. If there's a plan, like who do you think it is going to be next year? Is it going to be Devin Brown? Is that his name? Is there another guy waiting in the wings? Is there a freshman coming in this year? Is it transfer portal? Let me know. If you have some insight on that I don't have. But Brock Vandergriff, who's been at Georgia for 3 seasons, he's from the Athens area. He played at a private school in the Athens area in high school. Set a bunch of records. Was a very high 4-star. Recruit, 5-star in some ratings, but generally speaking, a 4-star, high-rated 4-star coming out. Been at UJ for 3 seasons now, and first 2 seasons, of course, kind of stuck behind Stetson Bennett. This season, of course, Carson Beck gets the nod, and behind Carson Beck, Georgia has Brock Vandergriff, and then Gunnar Stockton. It's sort of a 1-2-3 deal as far as when they came in. Carson Beck came in 2020. Brock Vandergriff came in 21. Gunnar Stockton came in 22. It was been widely assumed, at least by me and a lot of other Georgia people, that if Carson Beck decides to stay, Brock Vandergriff transferring out. He's been there 3 years waiting already. He's not going to wait a 4th year. He's would transfer out. Now, Carson Beck hasn't officially announced what he's doing yet as far as entering the draft or coming back for next year. I think Carson Beck had a really good year. Top 10 in a lot of passing categories. One of the best passing seasons any Georgia quarterback has ever had. Maybe the best passing season that any Georgia quarterback has ever had. And look, The guy's 12-1 as a starter. It didn't end the way he wanted it to. Didn't end the way I wanted it to, or other Georgia fans wanted it to, with that loss to Alabama in the SEC championship game. But I do think Beck is a draftable quarterback, even having just the 1 year experience. You know, it's a little. He's kind of an outlier in that he's only got 1 year experience, but he's been in college for 4 years: 2020, 2021, 2022, and then this season when he got the start. And he played well. It's hard to find a bad game that Carson Beck played. He averaged over 250 yards a game. He set some SEC records in terms of 250-yard or more passing games. I thought he played really, really good. I would love for Carson Beck to come back next year. Not because I don't like Brock Vandergriff or Gunnar Stockton, but I don't know what I'm going to get from a Brock Vandergriff or a Gunnar Stockton. This gets back to the experience issue at the quarterback position. Talent is great. Potential is great. Hype is great. A high recruiting rating is great. None of that is a guarantee that you are going to play well as a quarterback in college football. We've all seen 4- and 5-star quarterbacks play college football and not do very well. So I would rather have, as a Georgia fan, I would rather have Carson Beck coming back next year, knowing what I'm going to get from him and being happy with what I got from him this year, and assuming that he would only be better with a year of experience under his belt than to kind of roll the dice with a Brock Vandergriff or a Gunnar Stockton. Again, not that I don't think Brock Vandergriff or Gunnar Stockton can be good quarterbacks. Of course they can be good quarterbacks. They were both very highly rated out of high school with a ton of scholarship offers and have a lot of potential. And Brock and Gunnar are both more mobile than Carson Beck. So you would probably get a little bit more with the feet out of one of those two than you would get with Carson Beck. But again, I watched Carson Beck play all year. I never saw him play a bad game. If a Georgia quarterback could give me what Carson Beck gave me this season every single year, I would never complain about the Georgia quarterback. I would take this year's quarterback numbers at Georgia every single year for the rest of my life, and I'd be a happy camper. Maybe Brock Vandergriff would come in and play better. We just don't know. And I'm more of a fan of the known than I am the unknown. So again, Carson Beck has not made any sort of official announcement at the time that I'm recording this video, at least not that I'm aware of, on whether or not he is going to enter the NFL draft or come back to Georgia for another season. But because it's been so widely speculated in regards to Brock Vandergriff that if Carson Beck comes back next year, Brock would transfer out, this announcement from Brock Vandergriff that he's entering the portal is at least a sign pointing in the direction of Carson Beck returning next season as quarterback for UGA. We'll see. I expect Gunnar Stockton to probably stay on, and then of course Georgia has Dillon Raiola coming in as a true freshman in this coming class. So if Carson stays, then it looks like what we'll have next year in Georgia's quarterback room would be Carson Beck as a QB1, Gunnar Stockton at least entering the season or the spring as QB2, and then Dillon Raiola as a true freshman at QB3. And of course, Dillon Raiola is a 5-star. He's listed as the #1 quarterback in this year's class, according to some sites. Some sites have him as 2nd or 3rd. In any case, he's a top 2 or 3 quarterback in this year's signing class. So obviously a lot of talent, a lot of potential, and there's going to be a lot of hype associated with bringing in somebody that highly rated. But I think at least starting out in the spring, he would be on the bottom of the depth chart like any other freshman is, with an opportunity to work himself up. Maybe he passes Gunnar Stockton and becomes the #2. You know, that all remains to be seen. But I would be happy, I think, with that as a quarterback room at UGA next year. If you could tell me right now we'd have Carson Beck entering the season as a starter, a 3rd-year Gunnar Stockton as a QB2, and a ultra-talented true freshman in Dillon Raiola that kind of gets a year to learn the ropes, I think it's a pretty good quarterback situation for Georgia entering next year. So we'll see what happens with Carson Beck, but I do think this is at least a sign pointing in the direction of him possibly coming back next year at quarterback for UGA. But Brock Vandergriff in the portal, Kyle McCord in the portal, Dillon Gabriel in the portal, tons of other people. Look, the portal opened today, December 4th. There's going to be a ton of names announced today entering the portal. I'll probably do several portal-type videos over the next week or so. But I was literally sitting down at the computer to get ready to start doing a different video. I was going to do like a bowl video talking about some of my favorite bowl matchups they've given us this bowl season. And I saw this Brock Vandergriff news come across, so I said, well, let me just get on here and yap about this for a minute. But anyway, there you go. Brock Vandergriff in the portal. Have a good morning.